Hello, it's Sketch-tember, and we are celebrating by practicing different free motion quilting motifs every day in the month of September. And today I have randomly chosen a design, a stitching design. I'm referring to it as fans, and I'm going to eventually pair it up with this hourglass block. But first I want to practice with my design. And I think of a fan block, which typically is in a square, and we can think of it as those rounded petals. So there's your fan, and you could do that in your corner block of your hourglass. I like to vary my fans a little bit. So when I am working in a triangle, I use this diagonal as my base, and I'm gonna come and fill the space, and I'm gonna do a big loop in the center and then some smaller loops. And I ended on the far side, so I have to travel back and fill in that lower side also. So that's the loopy fan, but I can also do it with triangles. And the same concept if I use my center point, but this time I'm going to draw a long, skinny triangle and fill in my fan that way. So the hourglass block or broken dishes lets me practice both of those designs. So I'm going to start with the loopy fans in the darker half of my triangle blocks. And I could just work from the edge, but I don't get the same kind of fan. If you fan something out, it builds, and you need that kind of center point connection. So I imagine stitching here. I'm going to stitch to the center, and I'm going to do my big loop and my smaller loops, always referring back to that center point. And then I can finish traveling here, come down here, and we've changed direction. So that's really good practice. To keep going there. Travel to the center point and make your loops. And some people may find it easier to build on both sides. That really builds up the thread at that base, and I couldn't see where I was going, so I crossed my lines there. You can decide if you would bother ripping that out and fixing it. I don't think it would be that noticeable depending on your fabric choices and thread choices in your free motion quilting. And if it's not being judged, is the person using the quilt really going to notice that mistake? Or we could just do, concentrate on big loops, filling the space with just 5 petals, the center one and then 2 on each side. But I do try and make sure that I am using the same number of petals on each side of that center loop. So now we're going to work on our triangles, and I'm going to change my design a little bit. So let me come up to my practice area, and what happens if I change my pivot point to the corner of my triangle? And I could still fill in with triangles. It just changes the design a little bit to fit within that space. And since I really want some variation between those, I don't just want to have one curvy side and one straight side. So I ended up here. I'm going to come back down to this point, and I'm going to fill in with triangles. And I'm going to do the center one first, and then each side kind of a miniature. And you can use the lines that you've already drawn to help you guide. And if you wanted to use your presser foot or your hopping foot to keep that spacing pretty consistent, you could do that as well and give yourself, you know, that 1/4 inch border among everything. And the reason I changed direction and I like this a little bit better is that it flows with the block. The wide part of my triangles is facing the same direction as the wide part of my loops. So now I can stitch in the ditch here, come to my center pivot point, and same thing. I'm gonna do my triangle in the center first, and then fill in with the 2 sides. And then I can change and do the opposite direction for this next one, and then go straight up and across to fill in the last triangle section. And there we have our loopy fans and our triangle fans in the Broken Dishes classic quilt block. If you have enjoyed drawing inside of a block that really helps give you the feel that you're practicing to work on patchwork and not just filling an empty sheet of paper, then I invite you to visit my online shop at truebluequilts.com to download the Classic Blocks and FMQ workbook that has 30 different classic quilt block outlines and suggestions for free motion quilting that you can sketch along with us and practice. Happy Sketch-tember!